Welcome back to the Casual Ethnographer. Today's episode is personal. It's about history and about memory and what it means to carry someone's story forward. My grandpa Mac served in the Army during World War II. He was a POW in Europe. And in 1957, while a student at Oregon State College, which would later become Oregon State University, he wrote an editorial called No Money Back to Fascists. It was a plea and a warning from someone who had survived humanity at its worst and couldn't stay silent on what he was seeing. Today I will share that article with you. Let's get started. Before we begin, a quick note. This episode contains descriptions of wartime imprisonment and violence, so please take care while watching. My grandfather was born in Chicago in 1923. He was the eldest of 5 children, and his father died when he was 9, and with a depression that left the family struggling to eat. He turned 18, and just a few months later was the attack on Pearl Harbor. He found himself soon thereafter drafted into the Army. He was captured in Italy and transported in locked boxcars to a labor camp in Poland. While there, he worked the fields, was poorly fed, and endured brutal conditions. Some family stories suggest that he witnessed things that no one should ever see. When the Allies advanced, the prisoners were forced on a death march west, the same one he later described in his editorial. After liberation, he returned to Chicago, where he met and later married his sister's roommate, my grandmother. They had 2 children, and they moved around a bit because Grandpa was a big fan of fishing. He loved the water. They moved from Chicago to Wisconsin so he could ice fish. Then they made their way west to Oregon for salmon. And then he attended Oregon State College, which later became Oregon State University, where he earned a bachelor's in, he studied marine biology. So, Grandpa loved fishing. My memories of him as a little girl were he was always fishing or coming back from fishing, cleaning fish. They were serving fish. Fish was a big deal. He was a chain smoker. He used to sit in his recliner and watch old black and white World War II movies with the sound off. I don't know if that was for him or for us, but he would sit in his chair and he would watch his movies and smoke his cigarettes. He would sit around the table, for big family meals or playing cards with whoever would sit with him, usually my mom and my uncle. He bred Siamese cats. He was very good at it. He took them on their cat shows, and he was able to charge a decent amount of money for the kittens. But I remember him being cantankerous, and he was always looking for a way to plan a business or something. Even trying to trap me in it at one time when I was probably 12 years old. But he was Grandpa, and I loved him. In 1991, he died doing what he loved. He was fishing. His line's still in the water, and he went down on the bank from a heart attack. In 1957, while rebuilding his life, he wrote this piece for the Corvallis Gazette-Times. These are his words, exactly as they were printed. No Money Back to Fascists. Guest editorial by Maclyn Gerold. Corvallis Gazette-Times, December 10, 1957. I wonder how many readers are puzzled or perplexed by the December 4th editorial cartoon depicting the former financial backers of Hitler and Tojo with a pair of sacks, passionately beseeching the alien property custodian to return their World War II money. The people of America should know far more about the sad state of affairs that has come to pass, and that those backers of the former Axis powers are actually in a good position to have those sacks filled, with $600 million plus, and by no one but President Eisenhower, who is contemplating the return of that huge amount. The signing of any bill by the President to return this money to those despicable people would be a violation of trust, a crime, and a terrific slap against all veterans. There is a law against returning that money. I have a personal stake in this $600 million, as does every citizen, but mine is much more intense because I was a prisoner of war for a year and a half in Europe. The people who want their money back were responsible for inhuman cruelty that defies description. Many, many of my former buddies lie dead over in Germany and Poland because of those financial backers. They did not die a natural death. They could not defend themselves. They were starved, shot, stabbed, bombed, machine gunned, or beaten to death. Every one of us who survived that treatment can testify to this, because we were part and parcel to cruelty carried out against us with sadistic glee. Some people here at home might ask, but weren't you former prisoners of war compensated for your mistreatment? Yes, we were paid for malnutrition and inhuman treatment to the handsome tune of a couple dollars per day. It is a medical fact that all former prisoners of war have had their lives shortened from 10 to 20 years as a result of being prisoners. It is also a medical fact that every one of us has external and internal injuries as a result of being prisoners. There are approximately 160,000 former World War II ex-prisoners of war, and their death rate is the highest of any group of that size in the U.S. I would like to offer an example of some of our treatment received from the Germans as a refresher for those folks who remember the war, and as an eye-opener for those who do not remember. On January 18, 1945, I was among about 2,000 American soldiers who began a road march near Danzig in Poland. Soon the column had swollen to about 5,000 men. Our march ended on May 3, 1945, not far from Lübeck, Germany. We had been on the road continually for 75 days, day in, day out, despite the weather. We walked well over 1,000 miles, averaged 20 miles a day, and once did 70 kilometers. We slept in barns or out in the open countryside. All the clothes we had were on our backs: jackets, shirts, trousers, underclothes, and shoes. It snowed, rained, and the temperature was often below zero. All the food we had was what we could beg, buy, or steal. To steal from each other was a very serious offense. Should an offender still be navigating after punishment, the Germans took over because they hated a thief. We were cruel to ourselves. We received an occasional food package from the American Red Cross, to whom I owe my life, some potatoes from the Germans, and raw horse meat from animals that had been killed by strafing airplanes. We ate dog and cat soup with relish. On one occasion, after a spell of nothing to eat for 5 days, we passed a farm that had potatoes stacked in the open field. Many of the men broke from the column and ran towards the food. Our guards set up a howl and began shooting. Fortunately for me, I had sense enough to fall to the ground. Many bullets went over me. Others were not so fortunate. We were marched through German cities during air raid alerts when several thousand B-19s were overhead, in hopes that our presence would deter the bombarders. We were mixed in with road-bound military equipment so as to divert Allied fighters from strafing. On Friday, April 13, 1945, we were trying to cross the Elbe River and were attacked and strafed by 8 British Spitfires firing 20mm cannons. When we broke from the road and hit the ground, a fellow lying just behind me was torn in half by the shooting. The Spitfires made 2 passes each, and when they were done with us, the sight was pitiful indeed. After doing what we could for the dead and wounded, we went on toward the river. More fighters came over before we could cross and forced us to run into the woods where hundreds of German infantry were hidden. As we entered the trees, rifle fire from the Germans hit us. So many men fell that we were forced to return to the road and be at the mercy of the fighters. Later that day, one of our guards told some of us that the German officers had received orders to execute us, and as this was standard practice for the Germans, many men tried to escape and were shot. I could go on and on in this vein, but if I haven't made my personal stake in this clear by now, I never will. One more thing. When I was liberated by an American armored division on May 3rd, there were only about 300 of us left from the original column. The column was split once, but I later found out that that segment had been reduced, as was mine. I realized that the above reads like a sob story. I disliked to do it. Those former Axis financial backers are largely responsible for my story, and they necessitate my letter. To say that I am incensed would be putting it mildly. I would like to add a sort of footnote if you are interested in running down my claim that President Eisenhower would return that $600 million. Please write to Ex-Prisoners of War, Inc., George F. Bernard, adjutant, of 6413 Meadowbrook Drive, Fort Worth 12, Texas. Inquire for the September and October 1957 issues of the XPW Bulletin, which contains detailed accounts of Eisenhower's intentions, or contact Senator George Smathers of Florida, who is well acquainted with the affair. I have recently sent my 2 issues of the XPW Bulletin to the Portland Journal so that they may also know of this deal. At present, I am a student in agriculture at Oregon State College and frankly admit that I could surely use a tiny part of that $600 million for education purposes. But for me, it will not happen. I would like to see the children of my dead buddies realize some of that money that their fathers earned the hard way. Sincerely, Maclyn Gerold. Reading my grandfather's editorial today, I feel the weight of his words. He wrote from a place of anger, but also conviction, from a belief that decency means holding the line against cruelty, corruption, and indifference. It is unsettling to realize 80 years later we are still arguing over what it means to fight fascism, as if history hasn't already shown us the cost. His words remind me that the fight against dehumanization never really ends. Memory is not a museum piece. It is a responsibility. My grandfather wasn't a perfect person. None of us come from perfect people. But he believed remembering mattered. Silence is complicity, and the truth is worth defending. For me, sharing his story is a way of saying, I remember. Thank you for being here, for listening, for remembering with me. Veterans Day is a day to remember the many who have served our country. Both sides of my family have served. My family has been lucky in that my grandfathers, father, uncles, cousins, my brother have all returned home, but many have not. And I thank them all and their families for their service. As always, thank you for being here. I appreciate your presence. I'll see you next time.